So this lesson is optional as we said, and we are going to mention one improvement to the decision trees. So as we know, the information gain is biased to the attribute with many outcomes, right? Because if we have an attribute that contains so many values, unique values, then most probably the entropy we can get is higher than the entropy we can get from another variable that contains, let's say, 3 or 4 unique values, right? So the information gain prefers the attribute with a large number of distinct values. For instance, consider an attribute with a unique identifier such as a customer ID, right? So for the customer ID column, we have so many unique values because each row will have its own customer ID, and the customer ID shouldn't be duplicated, right? But actually, if you think about this column, it doesn't really add anything at all. It doesn't really contain any information. But even so, the information gain equation and the entropy equation will tell you that this column contains the most information. So by building the decision tree based on the information gain, we will maximize the learning from the tree by partitioning based on this feature, right? But this is actually a useless partitioning, right? Because this feature should be dropped from the beginning. So instead of ID3, we have an improvement called C4.5. So if you check the implementation of sklearn, you'll find that it's a hybrid between ID3 and C4.5. So C4.5 is the latest version or the most efficient way to write a decision tree. And it's basically using an extension to the information gain known as the gain ratio. And the gain ratio handles the issue of bias, this bias we introduced here, by normalizing the information gain using split info, right? So instead of just taking the attributes as they are, the gain ratio will normalize these features and therefore normalize the information gain, and so we can get a better idea about what is the best split. Okay, so this was just a brief lesson on the gain ratio. It's actually not that important at all, but I just wanted to mention so we would have covered everything in the decision tree. So in the next lesson, which is super important, we will learn the pros and the cons of the decision tree, and we will summarize this whole section before going into the project.